On today's episode, we get to talk about two more signings for the Carolina Hurricanes, and we get to talk about the Carolina Hurricanes development camp that's going to be in Raleigh over the next week. That and so much more on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen of the day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I am the Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. I do some AHL coverage over at the Caller Times. I am the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun show for you guys on a Monday edition of the podcast as we are going over the recent signings of Riley Stillman from last week and Josiah Slavin, who signed with the Carolina Hurricanes on Sunday afternoon. And then we get to finish up the show with talking about the Canes development camp that's going to be held over the week in Raleigh. But before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, or the fact they're actually over for hockey season and we're in the middle of summer, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So like I said at the top of the show, we're going to talk about Riley Stillman, Josiah Slavin, and what's coming up for the development camp for the Carolina Hurricanes and their prospects. But we are going to start with Riley Stillman and the fact that he signed with the Carolina Hurricanes last week back on July 3rd, which was that Wednesday. And it's for a 1-year, $775,000 deal with the minimum guarantee of $350,000. And he has a AHL part of his contract where it's $150,000 if he plays with the Chicago Wolves, and he's with the Hurricanes is $775,000, which will take up 0.88% of the cap. So the Hurricanes pick up the 114th overall pick from the 2016 draft by the Florida Panthers. 26 years old, plays left side of the defense. He actually spent last season playing his pretty much the entire season with the Rochester Americans in the American Hockey League. 2 goals, 6 points for 40 in 47 games. Going back to the 22-23 season, he actually did split time between the Canucks in Vancouver and the Buffalo Sabres, where with the Canucks in 32 games, he had 5 points, all assists. And then in the 18 games with the Buffalo Sabres, he had 1 goal for 3 points in 18 games. Kind of had a mixed season with he was with the Florida Panthers for a little while to start his career. Got traded to Chicago partway through the 2021 season, and then played with the Chicago Blackhawks for 52 games in the 21-22 season, where he had 12 points in 52 games. So when it comes to his previous contract that he did sign with the Blackhawks when Stan Bowman was the general manager at the time, was a 3-year, $4.05 million contract, which was a 1.350 AAV. When you're looking at Riley Stillman, the fact that he played almost his entire season last year with the Rochester Americans, did get into a playoff run in the Calder Cup playoffs, did unfortunately bow out pretty quick in the process. All things considered, it's a good pickup for the Hurricanes in terms of now they have someone for defensive depth on the roster with the recent news of Dylan Coghlan getting traded. That kind of opens up another spot with what's going to happen with the team moving forward. You're going to see probably Ty Smith being the 7th defenseman for the Hurricanes, and then you're probably your next call-up for the team is probably going to be either like Riley Stillman or Scott Morrow or someone in that nature in case something happens. But I could mostly say probably your pecking order now in terms of what the defense is going to be Ty Smith is your number 7. Riley Stillman's probably going to be your next call-up if anything does happen. Then you're probably looking at Scott Morrow and everyone else down the line. More so a defensive defenseman, is able to kind of do some stretch plays when they need to. I would not be surprised if you see him play with the Chicago Wolves for a good part of next season with Cam Abbott and just being someone who can kind of lead the way in terms of the younger players, with the fact that he does have a good amount of time playing in the AHL. Back in 2019, played 59 games with the Springfield Thunderbirds when they were with the Florida Panthers. Same thing for 2019-20. They played 25 games there as well. Syracuse Crunch in 5 games back in 2021, and then this past season where he played 47 games with the Rochester Americans. So he does have some good bit of playing time in the AHL. Did get bounced around a lot in terms of going up to the NHL for a little bit, coming back to the American League. And then I would say since 21-22, he spent a lot of time within the NHL for the most part. Not a lot of games, all things considered. Probably a healthy extra scratch or did get some injuries and stuff like that. But this past season, just playing in the AHL. So it's, like I said, it's going to be more of a stability for him, as well as he doesn't have to move around as much. And it's a 1-year deal. It's kind of just something that's kind of a placeholder. Like I said, with the other guys who the Hurricanes are signing, like, Tyson Jost, Eric Robinson and stuff like that. It's a lot of depth signings for the Hurricanes. Since now they got an AHL affiliate back with the Chicago Wolves. Now they're kind of shoring up roster spots to help the prospects along, help out Cam Abbott, who's coming over from the Rogla BK in the SHL, giving some veteran leaders who've been in the AHL for a while, kind of bolstering the roster for the Wolves, who are looking to get back into the Calder Cup playoffs for the first time in 2 seasons. Could he see possible AHL time? Maybe so. If they're, like I said, in case there's some injuries or someone's having a really bad start to the season, who really knows? But he might have some games here and there. It all just depends on what the situation is with the Carolina Hurricanes and stuff like that, and how injuries are going to occur, like I said, because you're going to be looking at Ty Smith as your number 7 D-man with Dylan Coggin leaving. And it's just, it's one of those things where you're getting a veteran presence of the AHL, someone who has had previous experience in the NHL too, who can bounce around. So that's kind of why you see a 2-way contract that's going to work for the Canes, where they don't have to worry about losing him and stuff like that. So it's, will I see him making an impact on the Canes roster next year? Not really. I don't really see him doing a whole lot. Honestly, it's just one of those things where they need some bodies in the AHL. Kind of start filling out that roster too, and that's kind of what you're looking at with Riley Stillman. Like I said, did play with the Sabres and the Canucks 2 seasons ago. So it'd be interesting to see how he does in the Hurricanes organization. I know, it's going to be interesting to see how he does it with the Wolves in the Central Division next year and stuff like that as well. So it's, a different change of scenery, playing from the North Division with the Rochester Americans, or playing like Syracuse and Utica and all of them. Now you're in the Central. Now you're playing the Milwaukee Admirals, Dallas, the Texas Stars, Rockford Ice Hogs, stuff like that, Grand Rapids Griffins. So it'll be fun to see what Riley Stillman does. Definitely want to keep an eye on him and what's going on with him, because, like I said, he's probably going to be like your next guy who's going to probably get called up on, probably looking at the depth chart of like he's your 8th defenseman in a sense, if you want to look at it that way. So just something to keep an eye on. Just try and keep with all the interactions and all the transitions that are, the transactions that are going on with the Hurricanes, and the fact that you do lose Pesci and Shea. No one knows what's going on with Tony DeAngelo, if he's even going to be back. Like I said, they just got, Dylan Coughlin just got traded for future considerations to Winnipeg. So it's just one of those things where Riley Stillman kind of moves up in the pecking order of where he's at now and what he could potentially bring to the Hurricanes. Like I said, he's got some sneaky speed, can play a 2-way game, more so a defensive guy more than anything else. And and he is the son of Corey Stillman, who was on the 2005-2006 Cup team with the Carolina Hurricanes. So he does have a connection to the Hurricanes before he came to the organization, with his dad Corey winning a Stanley Cup with the Hurricanes back in 05-06. So it's good to see we kind of that like nostalgia connection to the former days of the Hurricanes and stuff like that back in the day. So. But overall, I like the signing. It's a good depth piece. someone you can use to Chicago, someone you can bring up to Carolina if something really needs to happen. So, happy to have Riley. I kind of watched him a little bit last year with the Rochester Americans, kind of covering them a little bit, especially in the playoffs for the Calder Times. So definitely a good defenseman to have in the organization if you really need someone for a depth piece who does have experience playing in the American League and the National Hockey League as well. So talking about one connection with the Hurricanes and the Stillman family, we have another connection with the Carolina Hurricanes and another family, and he is the younger brother of a current Carolina Hurricane. And we are going to talk about Josiah Slavin here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. As you guys know, I love sports, and I know you do love sports as well, and we never want them to stop. But since we no longer have AHL games going on since the playoffs are over, and now we're kind of transitioning into the summer of, we're in the middle of baseball season, the WNBA is going, the NWSL is going, we got NASCAR, golf, and all that stuff. While hockey is around, we do have some other sports that are going on that can give us the sporting that we kind of want. And with FanDuel, the good thing is, too, the fact that we can sport as much as we want to. And that's when you open the app, you can dream up bets anytime when we're in the mood, especially with FanDuel. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to a segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So we talked about Riley Stillman in the first segment, how he has a connection with the Carolina Hurricanes and his dad, Corey Stillman, and what he can bring to the Carolina Hurricanes, the organization as a whole, really, for the 24-25 season. Now we get to talk about Josiah Slavin, who has a connection with the Hurricanes before he became into the organization, and that is his big brother, Jacob Slavin, who we all know, 2-time Lady being winner. He is quintessential, the best defensive defenseman in the NHL, very underrated. Someone whose numbers are going to get retired in the rafters. And of course, you know the whole story with Jacob Slavin. So now we do have 2 Slavins in the organization, and his brother Josiah is 25 years old, and he's actually a forward, so it's not a defenseman. We have now the counterpart of the forward and the defensive side of the ice for the Slavin family. Now, for Josiah, he was a 193rd overall pick in the 2018 draft by the Chicago Blackhawks. Like I said, 25 years old. His contract is $775,000 if he's in the NHL level, and if he's with the Chicago Wolves, it'll be $150,000. But his contract is guaranteed for $450,000. Coming off where he had a contract with Stan Bowman in the Chicago Blackhawks back in March of 2021 was a 2-year, $1,850,000 deal. And with the fact that too is also he got qualified offer for $787,500 going into the 23-24 season. Now with that though is he spent last season with the Toronto Marlies of the AHL, got 10 goals and 24 points in 70 games. And in the playoffs for the Marlies, he only played in 3 games and got 0 points. With him, he does have some AHL experience, but a lot of it is 15 games that he had back in the 21-22 season with the Blackhawks. Got 1 assist in those 15 games. And that's really been about it in terms of what he's looked at for the NHL level. Pretty much since the 2020-21 season, he spent a lot of time, 201 games in the American Hockey League. And you're splitting it up between the Rockford Ice Hogs, the San Diego Gulls in this past season with the Toronto Marlies. It's one of those things where, he's kind of been bounced around a bunch of teams over the last few years. I think the last time he played a full season with one team outside of this past year with the Marlies was back in 2019-20 with Colorado College, where he had 5 goals and 13, he had 5 goals and 13 points in 34 games. I know his last year with Colorado College, he got 13 points in 22 games before he played 15 games with the Rockford Ice Hogs. That season where he did play with the Blackhawks, he spent most of the season with the Rockford, got 18 points for 32 goals in 32 points in 49 games. So probably his best season in the AHL, all things considered, for the fact you get 32 points plus 18 and 49 games to Rockford. I know back in 22-23, he played most of the season with Rockford, got 11 points in 51 games, got traded to the Anaheim Ducks organization, and finished out that season with the San Diego Gulls, getting 7 points in 16 games. And like I said, this past season with the Marlies, 24 points in 70 games, was a +4, did get 45 penalty minutes. He's definitely a two-way center, all things considered, from how the Hurricanes are looking at him, but it's one of those things where he will be an RFA after this upcoming season, and he's going to be arbitration eligible. The fact is, it is a 2-year deal where overall, it's a really good depth signing for the Hurricanes, because if you look at how they were past their normal group of centers, if you want to look at how the minor league system was, you kind of had Ryan Suzuki. Other than that, not a lot of center depth. A lot of our centers are in the NHL right now. And in terms of how the rest of the roster looked, kind of slim more than anything else. So I think this gives Cam Abbott and the Wolves another piece to help build the roster for next season, because they want to try to make the Calder Cup playoffs. They haven't done it in the last 2 years. The independent last year was probably their worst season in forever. And I think it's where you can put Josiah Slavin in the top 6. Over 200 games in the American Hockey League. Good majority of that was with Rockford in the Central Division. So you've seen him play before. If you're the Wolves, you've seen him play against you with Rockford. Did go to San Diego for a little bit. Spent last season with the Marlies. Probably his most games ever played in the American League, because his previous best was 67, and that was split between 2 teams. Other than that, he hasn't really played a whole lot of games in terms of, with one team for a whole year. And that 70 last year with the Marlies is going to will go a long way. So for the Hurricanes, I don't see him making the big club unless a lot of injuries happen, which, knock on wood, doesn't happen. And even then, you still got like Tyson Jost up there, Kakaniemi, Drury, if he comes back, Stahl, Aho, Kuznetsov, even Ryan Suzuki, if you're looking at the depth chart. So I wouldn't really say you could probably see Josiah Slavin up with the Hurricanes unless something catastrophic happens. Most likely you'll probably see him maybe in preseason hockey, and I know I wrote an article about the addition of Josiah Slavin, and I'll link it in the descriptions where you can check that out. I'm hoping, what the Hurricanes did a few seasons ago with, Eric, Jordan, and Jared, played them all in a preseason game together on the same line. Maybe we'll get lucky and see Josiah and Jacob in a preseason game together where, Josiah's a center and, Jacob's a defenseman, and they're on the same pair, the same group together. So that'd be kind of cool to see, to kind of see the Slavins back together in that aspect. They've basically been playing on the same organization teams throughout their careers. I know it's at different times where you're going back to the Colorado Thunderbird days of the U16 teams, the U18 teams back in the day of the, Teal 16Us. You're talking the Chicago Steel of the USHL, Colorado College of the NCAA. So of course, there's, at that point, Jacob's already been kind of in the AHL for most of that time with the Steel and Colorado College, even the Colorado Thunderbirds days, because you're looking at the age difference of those guys. But it's kind of like you're kind of running in the same path as your brother if you're a Josiah. So, Jacob's gone through the Thunderbirds, the Steel, Colorado College. Josiah's coming up right behind him too and doing that. So it's kind of cool to see that Josiah's back in the same organization with his brother for the most part. Like I said, I don't see them playing together, but it's cool to see maybe we'll get something in the preseason where they're kind of together like we saw with the Stalls. Josiah, for the most part, like I said, he's bringing in a lot of AHL experience, over 200 games, plays a two-way game, really going to be versatile for the Hurricanes. I could definitely see him playing top 6 minutes, could see him on power play 2, maybe power play 1, depending on how Cam Abbott wants to use him. I could definitely see him on the penalty kill as well. So I can see the most part of the Wolves and Abbott using Slavin in a bunch of different scenarios and possibilities and getting a lot of ice time. And I think being able to have that 2-year contract with the Hurricanes, I think that's going to help him with having that stability where he's not having to play for 3 different AHL teams in 2 seasons. Not going to bounce around a lot and kind of be used as a veteran player. Like I said, even though he's 25, that's still a pretty young-ish age for a player, but being able to have over 200 games in the American under his belt, I think he could be a leader for the team and, be used in ways that maybe you haven't really seen him used before in terms of in years past with the Ice Hogs and the Marlies and, the goals for a little bit of time. So it'll be fun and interesting to see what Abbott and the Wolves use Josiah for. But like I said, it's a good depth piece for the centers because there's not a lot of centers in the organization. If you're talking about the minor leagues, unless you're looking at Ryan Suzuki, that's kind of about it. Other than that, it's just someone that the Wolves can use and could be a last-ditch effort in case a lot of injuries happen and you're just having extra bodies. And that's going back to like Jost and Robinson and Stillman. It's just getting yourselves bodies for your AHL teams. That way, your wingers and guys like Brandon Nadeau, Jackson Blake, Gleb Trekasov, and all of them, like they're getting their development done, and they're doing it with guys who've been there and done that in the American League, and Josiah is one of them. So I like the deal. It's a nice little 2-year deal. Not your $150,000 in the American League. You're getting some experience for a guy who's been there, and for him, you're getting some stability. You're with one organization for 2 years. You're in the same organization as your brother. Hopefully, they get to do something cool in preseason together. And I'm excited to see what he does for Chicago. Maybe it'll help them get back to the Calder Cup playoffs and maybe see a 6 banner go up in the rafters for the Chicago Wolves. So overall, I think a good signing. It'll be very interesting to keep an eye on as the season goes along next year in the AHL for Slavin, along with Stillman and the Chicago Wolves. Now, talking about prospects and all that, the Canes development camp does start this week. We have a schedule of what's going to happen over the next few days and some notable names that are part of the roster as well. And we'll get to all of that here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to a segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, at the end of segment 2, we're going to jump into the Canes development camp, what's going on over the next week, and what notable names are going to be at the development camp over the next few days that are going to be held at Visalign Arena between July 8th and the 11th. So yesterday on July 7th, the teams did arrive this morning, July 8th. There's a fitness testing at 9:30. Then we're going to see some on-ice training. Tuesday, July 9th, 9 a.m., you're going to see some skill sessions. Then later in the afternoon, there's going to be some off-ice workouts. And then Wednesday, July 10th, there's going to be a team skate at 9 in the morning. And then at 4 p.m., you're going to have a full team 3-on-3 action. And then on Thursday, July 11th, off-ice workouts and educational sessions. And that kind of is your schedule in terms of what's going on with the development camp. Not a whole lot of – it's a lot of just testing, skate sessions, team skates, off-ice workouts, stuff like that. Like I said, you will get a full team 3-on-3 in the afternoon on Wednesday, July 10th. And then in terms of looking at what the rosters are, some notable names and stuff like that. Of course, you got Bradley Nadeau, Felix Unger-Sorum, Alexei Himosami, Jackson Blake's going to be there too. Dominik Bendica, the draft pick, the very first pick of the draft for the Carolina Hurricanes, a defenseman. Gleb Trekasov is going to be there. Noel Franzen, one of the other draft picks as well. Oscar Voulette, Justin Poirier. Now, I'm really looking forward to Justin Poirier for the fact of what he did in the QMJHL with Barry Comeau last year. And then Josh Nadeau, Bradley's brother, is also going to be there as well. So it's going to be fun to see the brothers back together. Josh was an invitee this year. He's the only invite coming to the development camp for the Carolina Hurricanes. Everyone else has been drafted by the Hurricanes between drafts of 2020 up until the most recent draft of 24, with Josh being the only actual invite to camp. Once again, in terms of looking at the goaltenders, you got Patrick Hammerla, Jakob Vondras, who played with Sudbury last year. You got Igor Vilmakin is going to be there as well, and Rushan Kazazayev. So that's kind of like the most notable names. I'm looking forward to what Jackson Blake can do, Jan Perron, Noel Gunler. Like I said, you got Unger Storm's going to be there. You got the Nadeau brothers. You got a lot of your draft picks in Benedicta, Franzen, Voulette, and Poirier. So those guys are really fun to watch too. Michael Emerson's going to be there. So that's kind of like you're going to have 18 skaters, 5 goaltenders. That's where you're going to see a lot of like a 3-on-3 action for the most part of your guys, because you got 5 goaltenders. You can definitely kind of mix it up with your skaters. And like I said, got 18 skaters, got a lot of 3-on-3s you kind of can work out with as well. So it's going to be fun to see what the development camp's going to look like in terms of just seeing the prospects and what the Hurricanes are going to do, and especially with that 3-on-3 game later in the afternoon on that Wednesday the 10th, and then kind of, just getting the sights and sounds, hearing from those players as well, because I we're going to have a lot of, press going to be up there and stuff like that. For me, I won't be there. Unfortunately, I'm starting a new job, a new day job this week, so I won't be able to make it up there. Of course, I'll try to provide updates as much as I can. Of course, you'll hear from Walt Ruff, Corey Lavalette, Chip Alexander, all those guys are going to be up there, kind of being boots on the ground for the development camp and stuff like that. But I'm excited to see what we're going to see in terms of how the prospects look on the ice together for the first time come for the upcoming season. I'm curious to see how many guys are going to go back and maybe play in junior, or how many of these guys are going to stay over there in Europe. I know some of them are going to be staying over in Europe for the SHL and their various leagues for some of those guys. I'm hoping we get to see some sign their ELCs and get to see them maybe play with the Chicago Wolves next year, try to get more of our prospects taken care of, because I know last year was tough for the Canes, having a lot of their guys kind of spread out in the American Hockey League. I know a lot of them went back to Europe. I know Unger Storm did. He went back to the SHL and all of that. So hopefully, with the fact that the Hurricanes got an AHL affiliate back, I'm wondering how many guys are going to come back to North America and play together on the Chicago Wolves. I could definitely see the Wolves getting that huge boost of an injection of high-end prospects from the Carolina Hurricanes organization. So hopefully we have a good number of those guys back in North America, and maybe seeing some new faces that got drafted in the 24 draft, maybe making their way to the Chicago Wolves and playing with them in the AHL next year. So who knows? But it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to see what happens with that. I know it's a really quick 4 days essentially up there in Invisalign for the prospects, but just a little bit of hockey action kind of gets you excited for what maybe is to come for the future of the team. Of course, it's development camp. I don't know how much you're going to get out of that, especially with training camp coming on later this, in September, and the preseason and all that. But overall, it should be fun. A nice little few days at Invisalign, get some hockey sounds back once again, to kind of see where you're looking in terms of the future for the Carolina Hurricanes. So that will wrap up a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. We talked about Riley Stillman, talked about Josiah Slavin, and then talked about the schedule and notable names that are going to be at the Canes development camp over the next few days. If you want to keep up with me on anything that relates to the Carolina Hurricanes and maybe the Chicago Wolves in the future, you can follow me on X at OneTrueZach. You can follow the podcast at LO_Hurricanes. If you click the link tree in my bio, you can find all my articles and newsletters over at the Hockey Writers. You can also check out my stuff at the Calder Times for anything AHL related. You can find links to where to listen and watch my other podcast, The Surgecast. And for this podcast, you can find where to listen on all podcast platforms. If you leave a 5-star rating and a review, I might just read it on the show. If you're on the YouTube side of things, make sure to hit subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Click the thumbs up button. Let me know if you like the show as well, and that helps kind of build the channel as well, because we are over 900 subscribers and we are on the road to 1,000 and then more. But if we get to 1,000 subscribers, I might just do some special for you guys. So make sure to share the podcast as well with everyone that you know, because hopefully you can make those other Caniacs just everydayers just like yourself. But like I said, I hope everyone enjoyed the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. I hope everyone enjoys their Monday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.